Hello. Hello to all the people who are on today. Welcome to this session, today, July 2nd. Welcome to this amazingly beautiful, useful session, especially during current times. Natural movement for beginners with ICS and Sanket Bakshi. So natural movements include basic movements like locomotion of walking, running, climbing, crawling. Several of you would have already attended the session last Thursday, so already familiar with what natural movement concept is. Pretty simple. So welcome to this session, which will build up from what we did last time. Before I begin on any of that, I do need to mention as a disclaimer, which is officially required to do, and you will understand that this session is not meant for any specific medical guidance for anybody. And if anyone is experiencing any current medical conditions, then you should reach out to your trusted provider, medical provider, and take appropriate urgent care. The opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and trainers. They do not necessarily represent ICS or the employers of the speakers. You should understand that when you participate in any exercise or exercise program, there is the possibility of physical injury. So if you engage in this exercise, you agree that you are doing so at your own risk. Of course, all precautions will be taken, and you're voluntarily participating in these activities. Right. So this is the official stance, all that blah, blah, let's move on. Right, so really, really proud and privileged to have Sanket Bakshi with us. And I would welcome him to the session. Sanket, thank you for taking us through this session. And last session was absolutely fantastic. I would appreciate if people who are on the session, if you can put yourself on video for the moment as we go through this starter. And then when the actions begin, you feel free to either keep the video on or off. But so we see Richa over here with us, Vijay. Some people will be joining a bit later. I didn't hear that. And then Reina is on. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And Sanket, over to you to put a wrapper on what we did and what we're doing today, and all to yourself. Let's go, Sanket.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashish. Again, wonderful introduction. I really need to learn that. But thanks for that introduction. Hey, everyone. I do see some of the familiar faces, so definitely welcome back. For those who have not been here last week, we will definitely do kind of a refresher on what natural movement is and why do we even care, right? So as things go, I mean, when we talk about natural movement, it's literally everything, right from sitting, standing, jumping, running, climbing, picking stuff up. It goes across various different planes. And what we learn in this is efficient ways of doing that. How do you use your body more and more efficiently to do a given thing? Last week when we walked through this, we actually looked at basic things like walking, for example. Then we looked at things like getting up. How do you get up? Like we looked at one of the ways of getting up. And when I say get up, it's basically from a lying position or a sitting position to a standing position. How do you do that entire transition in a most efficient manner, right? So today, what we are going to do is we are going to continue forward with that journey. We are going to be learning one more way of getting up. Obviously, I mean, get up can be done in multiple different ways. There are like literally, I would say there are close to 80 ways of sitting. And there are definitely more than 80 ways of getting up, because every sitting stance is going to be having a different get up, plus sleeping as well. So hundreds of ways to get up differently. We are just going to learn one of the ways and how to do it more efficiently today. Then we are also going to learn a brand new movement, which we call as a crawling. And crawling is exactly as it sounds. You're on all your fours. Yes, exactly like you're doing right now. And think about the ways that you're going to be using crawling, right? I mean, typically you would think that, okay, I can crawl in under the spaces, right? Let's say you have a very low space. You can crawl in under the space. Yes, you can do that. Usually you would start thinking about crawling when you're climbing up as well. Like, let's imagine you're climbing up a very steep hill, or you're climbing up your set of stairs, and you can start using the crawling movement to start making it more and more efficient. We'll take a look at that today. So we are going to cover these two topics today. Let's gear up and start with a warm up. I would say if you are able to keep your camera on, that'll be great, because that allows me to see what you're doing and provide you with some feedback as we go. So if you are comfortable, do keep your camera on. If you're not, that's fine as well. I'll keep just keep it watch on how we are doing things here, as well as the instructions that you're going to get from me. And I think we should be good for most of those.
Awesome. That's great. If people can keep the video on, and at about mid time, let's say 7:30, 35 or so, will be our picture time. It's just like last time, right? Okay. So that's, again, it should be a logical gap for you. So whenever around that time, just let us know, and we'll just take a nice ICS pic.
Nice.
Right,
yes.
Let's go.
We can do that between the movements. All right. Let's start off. We will start off. Since a lot of people, since some of you have been here last week, we'll start off where we were last week. And just as a recap, we were doing a get up with a rock, right? So the way you do the rocking motion is that you're sleeping on the ground, legs come to the chest, knees to the chest. From there on, you almost kick your legs out to get into a rocking position. And we are going to start off with this rocking position. And maybe if you want to use your hands, just get into a squat. If a squat is not possible, just get into an assisted squat where you're supporting with your hands, but get into as much as a squat as possible. Okay. All right, nice. And let's extend this one more thing forward. As you get into a squat, let's see if we can get on our knees. We are standing on our knees at that point now. So you go past the squat, push with your hands maybe if you need to, and land on your knees. Really softly, we don't want to hurt the knees. So if you want to use your hands to support, yes, do that. The more motion you use from the rocking, the easier it's going to be. And in a way, I mean, this is more of a recap as well as to what we did last week. Yeah, so if you use more motion from the rocking, you will be able to get into that stance very easily. You can also use your hands right when you get up and push off with your hands to get forward. That's amazing. Take this one more step forward, and from a squat,
Sanket, we are having a little bit of trouble with audio.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah, let's try. Let's keep going.
Cool. So from a squat now, we move into a crawl position. Now in my crawl position, my shoulders are right, my wrists are right below my shoulders. My knees are right below my hips. So almost like I'm making a rectangle over here. And we are going to do some wrist work today. So let's warm up our wrist first. In that same crawl position, lean in front, lean all the way back. Possible. We don't want to hurt ourselves.
Sanket, we can't really hear you. Couldn't hear the last bit of instructions.
Okay.
Audio got a bit low. There was a little bit of disturbance in there, and then the audio got low.
The audio, yeah, completely lost.
Okay, I'll try to be. I'll
try to be a bit louder, if you could.
Louder? No, it's not work.
Yeah, if you can keep up to this audio level, let's try that. Otherwise,
Okay,
it was getting.
let me try to be a bit more louder. Maybe that would work. If not, I'll just try to dial in from phone or something. All right.
Okay.
So what we are doing is we are just basically moving forward and backward. We are going to do some wrist warm up. We need to warm up our wrist to be able to crawl, right? So flexing the wrist, making sure that they are nice and supple, nice and warmed up, right? Let's do this 5 times. 1, 2, go forward as much as possible. 3, 4, and 5. Nice. Now, once you've done that, I'm going to pick my knees off the ground. My knees are off the ground now. Okay. But at the same time, my knees are still below my hips, right below my hips, and my wrists are below my shoulders. Okay. So I'm not going all the way up. My hips are not going up. We are not doing that. My back is still going to be parallel to the ground, but my knees are off the ground. And let's put them down. Okay, let's pick them up again. And this time, try to see if you can take one hand off, put it back, the other hand off, put it back. All right. Okay, this might be a better view. So we are doing one hand off, other hand off, and relax. All right. So if you can feel your wrist, I think you might start feeling some kind of a burn in your wrist right now. So stretch it out, stretch out your wrist. Let's move them around. Make sure we get some nice blood flow in there. Awesome. The other thing that and now we are actually going to start with our workout. We're going to start learning the get up, the other get up that we were talking about. Last week, when we learned the get up, we were doing what we call as a figure 4 get up, which is basically where you roll, get into figure 4, and from that point on, you move up, right? So today, what we are going to do is we are going to learn a different way of getting up. Now, figure 4, because of all the rocking and everything that's involved, sometimes it's not good for your back. Let's say if you're in an area where it's all rocks or the ground is really hard, it's going to be hard on your back. So we are going to do another kind of get up today. And this is called as a tripod get up. I'm going to show you the movement, and then we'll start decomposing the movement into various different parts. So you're sleeping, you lean on one side to get up, and from that point on, you're almost making a tripod between 2 feet and one hand, and that's how you get up. Right? That's the movement we are going to do today, and let's start decomposing that movement first. Okay. I'm going to walk you through this very slowly, and then we'll break it down into specific manageable exercises. So again, my left leg comes up to my hips. I lean on my right side, prop up my elbow to get up. Again, my wrist and shoulder is now bearing my weight along with my hips. From that point on, my right leg that's extended goes all the way back, and I stand up. All right, so let's break this down now. Yes, almost very similar to how you guys are doing right now. So let's break this down now. So first thing what we want to do is see if we can get into a squat position. Anyone having trouble with a squat position, we can identify a different way. Ideally with a squat, you should have your legs firmly all planted on the ground. Yes, and if it's not happening, you can also put your heels up. If the legs are not planted, you can also put your heels up, but ideally the legs would be planted on the ground. Okay. Now in the squat position, I'm going to take my right hand, put it right next to my right foot. Okay. And my right foot comes forward. Yes, it's almost like you're sitting, you're relaxing now. Your right foot comes forward. So if my right hand is touching the ground, my right foot is coming forward. Okay. From that point on, let's try this a few times. So let's get back into the squat. Lean onto my right side and the leg comes out. Relax. Get back, lean onto the right side, get back into the squat, relax, go back. So bear in mind, like if my right hand is on the ground, I'm leaning to my right side so that almost at this point, I don't know if you're able to see this, but at this point, the only points of support that I have is my right hand and my left foot. And from that point on, I'm swiveling my hips to get back into my squat. Okay. All right, so that's good. Let's relax. Now, what we're going to do is, instead of coming back in the squat, we are going to take that right foot and drive it all the way back to almost make an equilateral triangle between my hand and my left foot, and my right foot is behind both of these. Yeah, don't go too far. So if I'm showing you a side view of what it looks like, I'm sitting here, right hand propped, lean in, and my right leg goes back. All right. Try not to make it go all the way back, because that's just simply going to introduce some unnecessary stretch. Be at a place where it's comfortable, and from that point on, you can just get up. Same thing, getting down. Right hand comes down, almost in a triangle. And when I say triangle, it's basically my 2 feet and my right hand making a triangle. And I use my right leg, I drive my right leg through to sit down. Yeah, and yes, feel free to use your left hand on the knee to prop it up. It's just an extra support. That's absolutely fine. So let's try to do this on both the sides. And if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to watch to see how we are doing it. So now your left hand is going to be propped up and your left leg is straight. Okay. Sorry. So just one thing here. I think it's slightly confusing. I understand it's slightly confusing. One way to remember this is when my left leg is all the way up straight in front of me, my left arm is going to be doing the propping up. All right. If my right leg is in the front, then I'm going to use my right hand support to prop up. Yes. Does that make it easier? Beautiful. Now, at no point are we really using our knees here. If you realize that, we are not really sitting on our knees at any point. We are simply using our hips, literally swiveling our hips back to drive our leg through and back. Perfect. Yeah, and keep in mind, like the better we have an equilateral triangle, the easier it's going to be on all the joints. So if I'm on my left side, I prop up. If I have a nice equilateral triangle here, it's going to be so much easier on all my joints. Whereas, let's say if my foot goes all the way back, then I'm introducing unnecessary tension over here. If my foot is all the way forward, then I'm in one single plane and I can easily lose my balance. Right. Which is why it's kind of important to have that nice equilateral triangle there. Okay. So now we kind of decompose this movement from sitting to standing. Now let's see how we are going to be going from the sleeping position to the sitting. And then after that, we'll stitch both of these movements together. Right? So now I'm sleeping on my back. I'm all the way flat on my back. My left leg comes up to my hips. I lean on the right side, prop up with my elbow. The opposite side, yes, the opposite side. Prop up with my elbow and get into that straight leg relaxed position that we are talking about. And from that point on, we are simply going back in that tripod. Yep, that's right. Perfect. Let's try this out on the other side now. Let's try this out on the left side. So now my right leg comes up all the way to my hips as much as possible. I lean on my left side, prop up on my elbow, get my hands straight. So now my load bearing points are on my wrist and shoulder, and I'm sitting straight in a straight leg relaxed posture. And from that point on, I simply pick my leg up, drive it back into that tripod position and come up. Beautiful. Let's try this out 3 times on each side. And if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to take a quick watch on how we are doing.
It is so interesting, Sanket, to look and observe and understand the subtle difference in how you do your movement and how one could be efficient, one could be totally derailing energy. So very, very interesting to watch you doing what you're doing. So very, very learning. Let's keep going. I'm sure everybody is learning more and more.
Thanks. Vijay, if you don't mind me calling you out. So when you are getting into the tripod, see if you can get into that equilateral triangle, right? If your leg goes all the way back, there are 2 things happening. One is you're stretching your leg unnecessarily, not needed. Second is when your leg goes back, your leg is not bearing a lot of weight. So there is more weight on your wrist and the other leg, and this leg is really not doing much work. So if you can bring it in an equilateral triangle, then it just becomes so much more easier on all the joints. And these are, while you're doing this, I'm just going to talk while watching you. But the reason why we focus on some of these things is there is something known as what we call as a conscious competency, which is where you're conscious of the movement and you're consciously getting into these equilateral triangle positions, or you're getting into this, okay, now I'm doing tripod get up. Now, eventually, once you keep practicing this becomes what we call as unconscious competency, which basically means that this is second nature to you. Every time you get up, you are actually getting up in that equilateral triangle position. You don't need to think about it, right? And that's the place where we want to get to, because when we get to that place, we know our joints are not having undue pressure. We are able to extend our longevity of the movement, right? All right, so So I think we did 3 times on one side. Let's do 3 on this other side. And we should be good there. Yeah, I think it's part of it is also just the practice. But if you also look at it, you're at any point of time, once you're just moving one leg for the most efficiency, right? Now I'm going to do it on my right side. So when I do it on my right side, my left leg comes up, like even if it is to my knee, that's fine. It doesn't have to be all the way up here. Let's say it comes up to my knee. I go on my right side, prop up with my elbow. After this, my left leg is not moving at all. I'm simply using my hips to swivel, using my hips and shoulders to swivel into this position. You see, this is my anchor. I don't move this. So, and once I'm here in this position, I just stand up. So my left leg almost becomes my anchor at this point. And from that point on, I can go back in the exact same routine. I can go back and my left leg doesn't even have to move. Right. So just something to keep in mind. You don't really have to move both the legs. It's just one leg that can do the movement, and your shoulder and hip joints can do the swiveling for you. So we'll give 1 more minute, and we'll take a water break, and we'll probably just open up the mic for any questions, concerns at that point. Perfect. And again, once you keep practicing this, you're going to start getting more and more fluent. Right? Once you keep practicing, you should be able to start getting way more fluent at doing this on either side. And again, the more fluent you are, the better the efficiency works. Awesome. So if you guys want, we can take a quick break, maybe take a water break. Feel free to unmute yourselves. And if you have any questions or need to talk through this, we can do that.
So Sanket, today looks like the movements are decently, for example, last time I remember asking you for one of the movement, which was, let's say if somebody was having an issue with the knee, how could we do an alternate way? But looks like today, everybody seems to be doing okay with it. I didn't hear any movement, which is good. Which is good.
Yeah, this is, again, and that's actually a great point you bring up, because see, the movement has to meet us where we are. Right? Our movement patterns meet us where we are. The thing that we don't want to do is, let's say if I have a shoulder problem, if I have a bad shoulder, I don't want to be doing this movement, because what's going to happen is my body is conscious that there is pain, and it's going to start compensating my movement patterns so that I don't get into pain. And that's an unconscious process that happens, right? So if you know, for example, you have a bad back, you don't want to do that rocking and getting up, right? You want to probably fall back onto this one. If you know you have a bad shoulder, you don't want to do this movement. You want to fall back to what we learned last week on the figure 4 get up, rocking and getting up, because that's not going to be at all.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's exactly why I'm not doing anything, because I have a bad back and a bad left leg. So for me, I'm watching and learning, but I can't do the movements just yet. So that's why I'm sitting through your entire video, but it's just exciting and it's fascinating to learn.
Right. And it's a temporary phase. I know Richa is a very, very active person and athletically as well.
Fingers
So
crossed.
just a circumstance time. Yeah, so I think that the thing is to learn about the movements and then also learn about yourself, and whatever is your soft point, the low point, be able to work around that so that we know the patterns of how to move with your own body. Everybody has a unique body, and they have to work with that.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just also the phase, right? I mean, like Richa, what you're saying right now, I mean, that's just a phase. Same thing with me. I mean, right now, to be very honest with you guys, I have some a bad tear in my shoulder right now.
Oh.
The thing is, which again happened when I was doing something stupid, which I should not be doing. But the point I wanted to make there is, again, see, this is a phase, right? We have these phases, and our movement needs to adapt to these phases. Any practice that you're doing needs to adapt to these phases.
Right.
If I keep practicing with my bad shoulder, I am going to be developing bad habits just because my body wants to compensate and does not get it.
Yep.
Let me mention one more thing, and then we'll go into this. As I mentioned, I'm also today is your show here, but I want to mention that there are ways where temporarily there are styles of giving rest to your body. For example, and you may, somebody new to this topic may actually find this very, very like, what? So people who are long distance runners, for example, there are ways to, while you are running the distance of, let's say 26 miles or even ultramarathon, there are ways where while you're running, and let's say the pain develops in your left upper leg. For just this example, there are ways that you can provide rest for 2 miles for this upper left leg while taking more use of the right leg. If there are ways where, let's say you develop a pain in your upper neck, there are ways to give rest to that. So it's just very, very interesting that once you learn about the body and the movement and what are the dynamics that God, created our body with, it's just a matter of learning those and then working around with it. And then even as temporary as for the next 10 minutes, I'll give my rest to the left foot while still running the 26-mile marathon. Let's just imagine that. So it's amazing how we could do when we learn the art of natural movement. Sanket, again, thanks for sharing this with us.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Absolutely. So anybody else has any questions? I mean, maybe we can just do a quick photo op at this
Perfect.
point.
Perfect time for that. So Ashish Mehra, thanks for joining the play, and Madhulika. I would appreciate if you could turn on your video and have a nice, I see a smile. So I will be giving a count of 3, and we'll take a picture. Again, thank you, Madhulika. This is the session you've joined. Probably you didn't join us the last session, correct, Madhulika? You are.
No, I haven't. Reena actually invited. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
All right, and Ashish Mehra. And here we go, Rana.
On
Rana, where is your gang, Rana? You had a full gang.
She had a full house the other day. Yeah.
There's ICS rehearsal going on.
Oh boy, okay. All right, but I will love that army over there. So, all right, at a count of 3, a nice smiling picture of yours with this session on Sanket Bakshi. So, on a count of 3, all right? 1, 2. There we go. And oh wow, no closed eyes, nothing. But anyway, I'll take one more anyway. So let me just say 1. All right, here we go again on a count of 3, which goes from 1, 2. All right. So what, a 60-second break, or do we need that? Anybody needs another break, or should we just go?
You can. Okay, we are good to go. That's awesome. So
That's the energy.
That's amazing. I love that.
Awesome.
So let's get to the other movement that we talked about before, right? We talked about crawling, And this is going to be very interesting and maybe a bit taxing as well. So let's get to that. Now, crawling is a kind of a movement. We kind of briefly talked about this earlier, but basically you can think of crawling. Let's say you're talking about crawling through cramped spaces. That's one thing. Usually the most used, this movement is most used, especially in climbing techniques. When you let's say when you have a steep hill to climb, at that point of time, you're on all your fours, and crawling is perhaps becomes a better way rather than just powering through with your legs. That just becomes way better. Um, that's there is also an inverted crawl which you can use to climb down, but again, we are not going to be looking at that. Let's start looking at what crawling means, right? I mean, I think for most of us, we kind of do understand crawling. The way we do it slightly differently here is we are going to be using more of our core, and the knees are not touching the ground. Again, because think about it, when you are using these movements, a lot of times if you are outdoors, you are not going to be able to, you don't really have a luxury of scraping your knees all the time, right? You scrape your knee once and you're pretty much done. I mean, you're not going to be able to do it for half a mile after that. So the best way to do this is to not have the knees touch the ground. Now, when you do that, you'll realize that there is a lot of, your core immediately starts getting engaged, right? We don't, at this point, again, understand this, that our wrist is right below my shoulders, my knees are right under my hips, and my back is parallel to the ground. And as I do this, let's start warming up first. So because as I do this, now I can basically start crawling with alternate limbs. In MoveNat terms, we call this a foot hand crawl. There are different various ways of crawling. This is what is called as a foot hand crawl. So to start with the foot hand crawl, let's get into the stance, into the crawling stance. Knees off the ground. And let's experiment with taking one hand off. Now, when you're taking one hand off, try to make sure that your back and your hips are still in place. You're not going up. Because if you're going up, again, you're going to be spending a lot of energy or a lot of weight on your shoulders and wrist, and your legs are not taking up any of that weight. And your core is also not engaged at that point. So you have a lot of
question.
Yeah.
How much of this particular piece is as a factor of how much strength you have on your shoulders or hands? Like, you know, some people could do push-ups. They would find this very easy. Some who don't. Is this really a technique where you need to have a stronger hand and shoulder, or not really?
I would say it's definitely taxing on the wrist, not as much on the shoulder as it looks. So when you get into this stance, you're going to see that your shoulders don't really have a lot of weight unless you raise your hips high up, because now my shoulders are involved in the weight bearing chain. If my shoulders are perpendicular to my body, then my shoulders are not bearing weight. My wrists are bearing my weight.
Nice.
So let's just experiment with one hand at a time, one hand off. If you want more stability, you can stretch your legs a bit. So it would, let's see if I can get a better angle here. Okay.
Yeah.
So I can experiment with spreading my legs a bit, just maybe by an inch. You don't want to go all the way out. And see if you can leave one hand, put it back, pick up your left hand, put it back, just for a second, while still maintaining your hip stance. If this is too taxing, let me know and we can find out another movement for today. Yep, that's right. Now, once we are comfortable with leaving our hands, part of it is also just letting your body balance itself, right? So the second step to this is understanding the movement, right? So first of all, when you are crawling at for a fraction of a second, your alternate hands and legs are off the ground and then back on, off the ground, back on. So next is we want to practice that balancing of alternate limbs off. Again, we want to keep our hips in the position. Just pick up one hand. Let's say I pick up my right hand and my left leg off and put it down. Then my left hand and right leg off, put it down. Try it out with alternate hands, but keep your hip stance as much as possible. And you don't have to hold it off for a long time. It can just be a fraction of a second. A lot of it is just getting your body used to it. Yes, it is going to be taxing on the wrist. So just stretch out the wrist a bit. Wrist circles, stretch your fingers, compress them into a fist, take them off, and maybe get back to work if you can. So once you're comfortable with one alternate hands and legs off, even for a few seconds, then we can start getting into the actual crawl. This is definitely a lot of core work. I mean, I won't say that's an easy movement. So also I would say don't get disheartened if it's not possible to do a lot of hands and feet off at a given point of time, because there are two things to this, right? One is the wrist. We don't usually use our wrist as load bearing.
Yeah.
Guess what? I mean, if you were out there doing stuff outside the house, actually working, you would have been using your wrist way more. We just don't do that. I mean, we are either sitting on a computer, we are not using our wrist. Let's say you're eating something, you're not using a wrist, right? Or you're flicking a remote. I mean, there is very limited things that we do with our wrist, whereas wrists are really excellent structures for bearing load, for shifting weight, moving and hanging. You know, they are excellent structures there. So
God bless the kids. They do it so often. Basically, what you're saying is, let's get back to being kids, huh?
Yes, get back to being kids, and that's an amazing way of putting it. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So it will take time. I won't sugarcoat this. It will take time. Yes, but take breaks, shake it off, and then keep going at it. You know, keep going at it. Once your wrist strengths build up, it will become very easy. And then again, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a few days for this to build up. You'll realize that as you keep going, as you keep shaking off, stretching and not stretching, within 5 minutes, you'll start getting more and more comfortable at this. And then the second factor is just the balancing. There are, we usually just look at the bigger muscles. We are looking at, when we talk about exercise, we are looking at biceps, we are looking at thighs, we are looking at, oh, my back is so strong. But these are all big muscle groups, right? What we don't look at is the smaller muscles that are used for these finer movements like balancing. And because of that that's another thing which is going to be because of which our body gets fatigued very quickly, right? So now when I'm balancing here, I'm going off with one foot and I'm swiveling here right now. But let's say if I'm not swiveling, let's say if I just keep my balance here, I am using a lot of finer muscles right here in my forearm, not my bigger forearm muscle. I'm also using a lot of muscles right here in my thighs and my core. Keeping my core tight helps me take the weight off of a lot of bigger muscles. But we just need to get used to using these smaller muscles, which is why all these balancing kind of exercises help. So let's see if we can get back and try it out one more time and alternate hand and feet off. Alternate hand, alternate feet, alternate hand. So right hand off, left hand off, right hand left foot, left hand right foot, right? And keep your hips down, because if your hips are up, your shoulders are taking a lot of weight. All right, let's maybe take a 30-second break. Stretch your wrist, rotate them a bit, shake them a bit. You can rotate and stretch in the same go as well. Almost looks like a dance move, but again makes use of a lot of the smaller, finer muscles that. Right. And what we are going to try now, I know we are not almost there with the balancing, but what I'm going to want you to try out is actually introduce some kind of a locomotion, some kind of moving from point A to point B. Because when we add an objective to our movement, our mind actually makes the movement work for us, right? So I want to start adding that objective right now. I want to start now when we get back after these 30 seconds of break. I want us to at least go 5 steps with a crawl. Make sure your hips are low to the ground. Our knees are not touching the ground. And we are doing that alternate hand and foot movement. But you will see that once you add an objective to the movement, our body is actually able to push us through that. Right? Comparing this with, I usually don't like to compare it, but if you're comparing this with a standard gym setup, the problem I find there is we don't really have a lot of objective, which is why most of the people lack the motivation to actually make it through the first month after January. So the moment you provide an objective to your body to do something that it knows it can do it, you will see that you are able to complete that movement much better.
How about this for an objective? I think there was a Batman movie where this guy just did a crawl, and I was looking at this guy like, humanly, can you do that? But I later on heard that it was actually done really by that particular person. He had practiced a lot on his core, and he literally, like a tiger. Imagine a tiger, very low-lying tiger moving on a crawl. That was he was literally touching the ground on a body, but he was crawling. Imagine how difficult that could have been. So I don't think you're asking us to imagine that and do it here, but
no, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, yes, you're right, because once even visualizations, right? Visualizations like that, amazingly helpful. It's a mental thing for your mind to push it through.
Yeah.
And,
so you're saying that if you imagine that, your body or your brain will actually make you work like that?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm on to that imagination.
Yeah, bear crawls have become part of gym workouts now. So the whole going back and forth in a bear crawl and then coming back, it's not easy as it seems. I mean, you would think it's easy, but as they would say, band baj jati, because you've got to hold that posture right when you're doing it.
Posture, that's right. And like I said, right? I mean, the foot hand crawl or the bear crawls is one of the basic crawls. Once you do this, then you can start going into more and more deeper crawls, which you start using your core, the ones that you're telling. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
it's not easy because you tend to kind of your back.
Yes, you.
It's easy. It rounds. Yeah.
Yes, and if you look at the gyms that actually do that, like I know a CrossFit gym that I go to, they do that, and for many people, they are actually doing this rather than being here.
Yes.
So it's almost like a downward dog position.
Downward dog, and then you're walking.
And that's going to be really a killer for your shoulders. It's not it's for your shoulders.
That's
all right. So let's actually get back and try out. Now we are doing at least 5 steps. If you can, let's do 10, but let's do at least 5 steps and see what our mind makes it possible. Let's go.
If I didn't know it was Sanket, I would have said, that's a kid moving right there.
That was fantastic.
You haven't met me in person, right? You probably say that even when you meet me in person.
Looking forward to it sometime.
No, I'm just saying because yeah, I'm fairly low stature compared to most adults. So yes, I do get that.
Well, who knew about that for Amir Khan until somebody met him in person? Well, let's get back to this topic.
But that was good, actually. I see we are starting to do a lot of progress.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of mind game there. How do you guys feel? I mean, do you guys want to come off mute? Probably just talk about it. What do you feel? How does it? How was it different when you introduced a goal?
So I think the movement is definitely easier than doing it on the spot because there's a constant change in position for both the wrist and the ankle.
Yes.
So it's a fluid motion. So there's some momentum helping you. The force direction changes. It's a little bit much easier to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why we wanted to introduce that motion there. The second thing, though, is that if you keep practicing it on the spot, then you are going to be developing those right habits of keeping the head down, of using your core, and that is what helps you. Because once you have the motion, you tend a lot of times we tend to compensate in the movements just to get the motion completed or just to get the goal achieved. But the in-place training that we just did, that's actually going to help you make it more and more fluent. Perfect. So let's again take a quick 30-second, maybe 1-minute break, and let's try it out again. And this time, just be more cautious about the movement, right? Just be more cautious. Let's see if you see your knees going in more towards your hands. Try to stop that. Try to keep that rectangle between your knees and hands. Make sure your back is parallel to the ground. Just be more conscious about the movement. And yeah, let's try to do that again. If you did 5 steps right now, try to see if you can do 10 on the next go. Because now that mental barrier is gone, that this is a complex movement, that's not there anymore. You guys just did that, and I think all of you guys did pretty amazing. All right, so ready to try out one more time? Let's do that. So let's...
One question.
Yeah.
Curiosity. In general, what have you seen? Like, obviously, whoever is doing at whatever level at this point, obviously practice will let us get better with that. So generally, average, what do you think? How many weeks, months does it take for somebody to get, to a very comfort level of this?
So I would probably not put a number to it because, what I like to say is that movement is a journey. Like we all start at different points. Okay, so we all come with different set of things that we can and cannot do. So it's not really how much time it is. I mean, to be honest with you, like I can do a foot and crawl, but then there would definitely be, I know people who can do it way more fluent than what I can, right? And so even at any given point of time, you're always going to be in that journey. Now, having said that, it does require a good amount of core strength. It does need a lot of coordination. So as you get to it, as you start more and more engaging your core, if you're doing things apart from this that are making your core work harder, you're going to have a lot easier time. Wrist, like I said, is one of the most neglected joints that we have. If you start doing more and more wrist work, load balancing on the wrist, you're going to start having easier time on the crawls. So it's multifactorial. I know in short the answer becomes it depends, which is
Correct, right.
but it's really multifactorial.
And I think these steps done on a carpet, maybe okay, but let's say if somebody's on a hard floor, then maybe they need to wear something like a protective thing on the.
Well, I mean, honestly, your body gets used to it. Like I do foot and crawls outside, and I would do them on the ground for about 100 meter, 100 meter straight. It's a matter of your body getting used to it.
So when you do it outside, do you not have like a glove on your hand or like bare skin on the ground?
You'd go bare skin. I mean, like I said, your body tends to get used to a lot of different things. We just don't expose our body enough to the elements.
Nice. Very interesting.
So,
all right.
I don't know if everybody did give it a shot. If you want to do it one more time, we can do that. All right, let's just do one more 10-step or a circle. And now, as you get more and more comfortable with this, you can start moving, start experimenting with moving forward, backward, and sideways as well. So with that, I think we are pretty much at the end of our session. If there are any questions, we can probably get off mute and talk about that as well.
Right. The good thing is we had the session interactive as well, so several members were able to open up and speak out. But if anybody has any particular question that they had in mind or any feedback as well, would be most welcome to share with us. Or any moment of aha that you had during those two sessions we had this Thursday and last Thursday. It's amazing when you begin to work with our own body. There are things that we begin to learn. We didn't know that. In fact, I'm pretty sure some of you, every one of you, if you keep consistently doing things over here, you will find, wow, I could do that. So if you happen to have those moments, please share that thought, that message, that positivity back with ICS and with Sanket as well.
Yeah.
Any feedback from anybody?
Just to piggyback on that thought, right? I think Ashish, you mentioned about the movie, and I remember I was watching which one was that? Wolverine.
And Wolverine. Oh my God! Yes.
Logan's brother, he has this amazing wolf-like run, if you remember that. And that's actually what got me triggered and into figuring out how to do that. So once you, again, that's part of it is again visualization, right? I mean, just knowing what you want to achieve, and eventually, if you have the right patterns in there, your body will make it happen.
So, for me, the aha moment was learning how to walk straight with your body aligned, your hip, ankles, and shoulders. Like I notice I tend to lean forward as I walk. It's just something now when I'm walking, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm again leaning forward. Go back a little bit. Like it's funny, but I never realized I walked incorrectly or my posture was wrong. So that's been a big aha moment for me.
That's good to
Yeah.
know. One quick parting thought maybe on that, on the walking thing, right? And this is something which actually I realized I realized which I was not doing right, is just when we walk, a lot of us also tend to have our foot outward prone or inward prone. And again, it's just different load patterns that happen, like let's say if you're walking like this, you're pretty much your gluteal muscles on one side are pretty much shut down. So it was happening with me as well. It took me about a year to constantly keep working on that and fixing it. But once you do that, I mean, a lot of times we use those patterns, the same walking patterns, and keep running, right?
Yeah.
And what used to happen is, for me, I would run with that pattern and my knee would hurt. And once I fix that pattern, then the whole muscle chain starts working more appropriately, more in a much more better way. And guess what? My knee pain just goes away after running. Again, this is not a prescriptive guidance. Don't take it for that. If you have knee pains, obviously you need to show it to someone. But what I'm saying is that
Yeah, I mean, this has been, yes, it is. Again, this is not a medical session, right? So we already put the disclaimer out. But what you're saying is something that has come up many times. In fact, I'm thrilled that you're saying that, because I myself consciously practice that, and there are ways to actually make. In fact, what is said is supination, pronation is really what you're referring to. The foot goes this way. So there is a particular muscle in the upper part of the body. If it is not as strong, that leads to some of that happening. The best way of energy conservation and movement is really when both of the feet are exactly straight, right? Like how you shared. There are ways to get it back to in that way. And I do recall about. In fact, I'm still, so about 8 years or so, I'm still very conscious about keeping those straight. But it took me about 8-9 months to really, after consciously knowing that I'm actually like that in that foot, spreading apart. It took me about 8 to 9 months to really get that to consciously be straight. And it has helped a lot. So that's something that I can myself share. It works. It does work.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Absolutely. And part of it is like any efficiencies with walking or running, most of them originate from the fact that our glutes are not used the most,
Yes.
right? So if you see an issue on one side of your body or one side of your leg, you probably would want to start working your gluteal muscles more. Maybe squatting down, like doing like a crisscross applesauce, like all of you guys are doing right now, right?
Yeah.
And getting up from that, or maybe just squatting down. Just like for about 4 years, I didn't had a sofa. I actually got rid of my sofa, and we used to have all the meals were on the floor. Everything was on the floor. You want to watch TV, you have to be on the floor. And that forces you really to keep doing that squat motion, up and down, get ups, and all of those things. And it just builds up all these finer muscles that are going to help you start doing that balancing properly.
Any other things that you would want to share? Like, for example, like no sofa for if you're watching TV. Oh, yeah, these are practical things. Any other thing that you have been following just in normal day to day to allow you to be better?
Honestly, I do a bunch of things that I like to call them snacking, right? I mean, we kind of keep snacking every day, like on candies and stuff like that. But you can actually snack on movement as well. For example, you know how they have these doorway pull-up bars?
Mm-hmm.
I have a pull-up bar right outside my office, like a small closet room that I call my office rather. And the rule is like every time I'm either going out or coming in, I have to at least hang, maybe do 1 or 2 pull-ups at least. And every time, let's say I come out in the morning, I have to at least do 5 pull-ups, and I just keep snacking on the movements every few hours, every few minutes, whatever it takes. You are on a call, you're probably not doing a video call. Use that time, maybe maybe squat on your chair, maybe just prop up one leg like a Captain Morgan pose, and keep snacking on that movement rather than having your body in one stance, because we are not supposed to be sitting or standing for a long amount of time. I mean, people use stand-up desks as well, but even if you're using stand-up desks, you're not supposed to be standing up pretty much 8 hours a day. So I would say keep moving, just small snacks. And when you introduce the small snacks, your actual workout can just be a 15-minute, because your warm-up is already done. You give at it at a full intensity, 15 minutes you're done, and then you're back to playing with kids. So more about efficiency.
Well, that's definitely what I am taking away. I'm looking at my home office door, and there's a pull-up bar over there, but I can start snacking on the idea that you said. Absolutely, done. That's my goal from today, right? In fact, as soon as I'm done with this session, I'm walking out. I'm not walking out without that pull-up thing that you did. That's an awesome thing. Anybody, anything else to share with Sanket or with anybody else in the group? Any feedback? And I love that thing going on over there with Rena. You guys got a good army going over there. Absolutely. Whatever those kids are doing, that's what we're trying to get done, right? With this movement. So that's the goal.
You have a lot of energy. They're simply snacking on the movement, right?
Yep.
Guess what? If you keep doing
snacking on the movement.
Yeah, if you keep doing this, if you keep snacking, you are probably going to start feeling the same amount of energy as the kids. It's insane, but it works. It works. I mean.
All right.
Anyway.
Sanket, any closing marks for all of us, and we will very, very pleasantly end this session.
Thanks. No, I would just, first of all, I just wanted to thank you guys. I mean, this has been a fabulous audience. Thank you so much. You guys have been very, very open on sharing feedback as well. I really appreciate that. And I like I said, I mean, my goal, the only thing that I want to do is be able to share everything about movement to as many people as I can, right? I mean, so really thank you for being a part of this and attending, and just keep moving. I would say just keep moving. That's the best thing that we can do for ourselves.
Awesome. All right. So ending this session with Sanket Bakshi, 2 sessions already, and there are much more fun camp sessions starting up. Registrations are open, craft, and multiple fun things coming up with ICF. So everybody, have fun, enjoy the time of the summer, and again, thank you, Sanket, for sharing such fantastic.
Thank you, Sanket.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.